Hello and welcome to Dungeon Master Talk, a podcast by Dungeon Masters for Dungeon Masters. I am Dungeon Master Shay, and with me today is...
Hey Shay, it's Kyle. How you guys doing today, listeners?
I hope they're doing great, man. I'm glad that they're back with us again after the initial episode of Season 2.
Dose.
We are in rhythm once again, ladies and gentlemen, and like we just alluded to, thank you for being here. We are just blown away at the support that we've been seeing ever since we started this podcast. And I won't go into details, but just seeing the stats and the and all of that, we're just blown away by where you guys are from, whether you're in the United States where we're from or you're across the globe. It's just really amazing to see the level of integration and the interaction that we get to have with you guys. And we're just super grateful that you're here. Just a little bit of housekeeping, if you wouldn't mind. On your favorite platform of choice, please hit the like or just a subscribe button. That would just help grow the DMT community and just really help get the word out about that. But also, if you feel led to, we would love any 5-star reviews, any emails that you would love to send to us, and we will give you all that information on how to get in contact with us at the end of the episode. Also, real quick, we do owe you some game updates, and we will do that at the end of the episode as well. Because if I don't update you on the game, I think my rogue will probably stab me the next time they see me. And
in-game or in real life? Because that's different.
If I said yes, would you believe me?
That sounds like a rogue. I buy it. I was questioning if they were a rogue or not.
Yep, and she knows who she is. So that being said, Kyle, let's do a little bit of a recap from last week. So last week we started off Season 2, like we mentioned.
We named Season 2. Do you remember what we named it?
No, I should.
Electric Boogaloo. The thing I name every Season 2. Electric Boogaloo.
I called it Story Concept. That's about all I remember.
That was the episode. Season Electric Boogaloo.
Oh, that's right. I remember that.
Yes. So, listeners, if you...
And you guys got to hear about my awesome internet connection for about a minute and a half, too.
Oh, did that make the cut?
It did. Because it just, like, the way the voices were going back and forth, I was like, this is kind of good. I'm going to keep it. Because, we promised a little bit of weird, and that's a little bit of weird. So...
Fair enough.
You got that going for you.
Listeners, if you just listened to episode 1, bear with us. We're going to do a little recap. It'll be for those who listen to it drop, or if it's a spaced out at all, or if for some reason you like to start with the second one. So in episode 1, we went over the kind of goal of the season. We're going to make this entire new campaign, and the goal of it is come the end of the season, if you kept along with the notes, boom, you will have your campaign to run. That's what we're looking to do out of it. Hopefully that's fun, and let us know what you're thinking about it. And like Shay said, we'll tell you how at the end. So we started with what the goal of our campaign was. We're telling a story in a world that's gone through an apocalypse. We talked about how the war between the two forces of the gods, good and evil, got super severe, and basically the inhabitants of the world tried to capture the deities, and it didn't go so good. So apocalypse, and that caused the world to get left alone. And here we are. Life has sort of come back, and that's allowed there to be more of that's our explanation for how the additional races came to be from our 3 starters, which were the dwarves, elves, and humans. Mm-hmm. But from that, now we're going to have the full D&D 5 edition set of races and classes. And then our initial hook that we came up with is that we're trying to restart civilization. So it's been several hundred years of kind of nomad lifestyle for each of the races. Every attempt so far of restarting a lasting civilization has floundered due to pillaging and plundering. And so now campaigns kicking off where we're making the first real go for it, or not really we, but the players and the NPCs that they interact with. Mm-hmm. So, Shay, am I leaving out anything? That's what I had in my notes.
No, that sounds about right, Kyle. So let's go ahead and jump into what we have for today. I think with every good campaign, you need to have a good starting point and a good ending point, right?
Yep.
So with a starting point not only counts for the starting area, but starting level. And that can make the world of a difference on either your player selection and or your player characters and what they make too. So I think it's always good, especially if it's a first time building a campaign, start at level 1. You know, everybody starts on the same playing field, and it kind of gives you as a runway as a DM to really expand and kind of learn with your players too. If you're a seasoned DM and you have the urge to like start at like level 3, level 4, somewhere in there, right? That's fine. Something you want to keep in mind is maybe they've been doing exploration in your world already, maybe either as a group or maybe they've been loners, maybe a couple of them have paired up, you know, however they want to do that. But if they're already level 4, like we kind of brushed on in the past season, they will have some experience. But if everybody starts at level 1, more than likely for this story, I think it'd be a good idea because the sole focus has been to restart their civilization as they know it.
Right. I won't say whether or not I agree yet or not, but really for this one, if we think about it, this world, if it's like we said, post-apocalyptic, they've probably been scavenging for their food already, maybe traveling some if it's been mostly nomadic culture. One could say that is the argument for why they shouldn't be level 1. Because really, when you think about the level 1s, you're talking about someone who, for the most part, has lived to this point an average life, average purpose. They've not done anything to rise above the general public, because that's really your level 1s. Your commoner NPC that you encounter, unless they are some war general or character that has some reason to be higher level when they encounter them, those are your level 1s as well. So that's both my argument for and against them being number 1 is if everyone's been nomadic, that's kind of the base point then. That's level 1.
Yeah.
But then also if we're saying like this is the group that's like saying, hey, we're going to restart civilization, maybe they've seen some stuff or gone through some stuff that's caused them to say, hey, we need to reestablish borders, reestablish wall, have a society, and we want it. What's the genesis point of that? And does that cause this group to be above level 1? Or are they the worker bees for someone who's like determined they're going to do this, a group or an individual, and maybe that individual is greater than 1?
Well, I was kind of thinking about this too just now. Like, okay, so you could have like a farmer, right, who they have learned, or even like a shepherd, like they've learned how to protect their crops, protect their animals from wolves, from a bear, coyotes type thing. So you could have like a basic level 1 fighter come out of that. Like I would almost submit that some commoners could be level 1s and not necessarily level 0s. Like you could even have a bard per se that has been playing in dive bars, and I mean, granted, they're okay, they're not great, but you know they're making it by on tips and stuff like that. I mean, you know, musicians do that in real life anyway,
right?
Like you could even make the case that to come in as level 1, I mean, you might have one guy that's part of the militia, or some guy who is coming out of med school and is like, ooh, I gotta try something, you know, I gotta figure out how to help people. But yeah, I mean, just to kind of go along with, yeah, your commoners can be level 1, but probably not much more than that, I would say.
I really do think so. Listeners, I was trying to just bring in the counterpoint because I wanted there to be one. I came in ready to propose level 1 as well. The benefit I see to starting later level, and I think listeners, if you're coming along with us and maybe you're taking notes, maybe you're wanting to spin out your campaign version of what we're coming up with, you could start this at level 5 and it's going to be fine. It's going to be really fun. That's really where classes feel like they become their own. But honestly, I prefer campaigns starting at level 1 because how I, as a player, play my level 5 character if I've earned it is different than normally how I started off. Because if I started off at level 5, I'm min-maxing that from the start and then I'll get weird as I go.
Accurate. I'm raising my hand. I do it too.
Yeah, because like normally if it ends up there, and I've truly been playing, I'm invested in this character, it's not been maxed anymore. It's what makes sense for the character and the stuff that they've encountered, how they're playing with the party. And so I love that level 5. I love that level 5 that's earned, you know? And same for 10. And not saying that there's anything wrong with starting at those higher levels, because it is difficult to get to 20. It's difficult to get to 15. because it's difficult to have a campaign that goes that long. So it's sometimes fun to start there so you can have those experiences. But I really think for what Shay and I'm just assuming what you have in mind. Really, listeners, we didn't pre-talk about much of this other than the broad concept so that you could hear us have discussions. But what I'm assuming both of us want out of this campaign and the length that we're thinking, 1 makes more sense. That way we get the experience of leveling.
Yeah, and realistically, like your backstory would be your level 0, and then by the time you arrive at your starting point, you're probably level 1, or whatever you end up doing in your session 0 could be your 0 to 1 experience to where you actually start session 1 at level 1.
I think like a big thing for us and listeners, you're going to have to keep us honest on this when we get to the step beyond this, is making sure that we put enough into this world that building those backstories is still rich and fun, because we're creating a unique world in that it's not robustly built with all these cities and all these kingdoms and countries and democracies versus dictatorships and all that stuff going on. We've created a world where it's like we've essentially said, hey, by rule, there is not a civilization for you to say that you're from. You can be from like a nomadic tribe.
Yep.
Or you can be from a small family.
But everywhere.
And that's I think the thing that we're going to have to make sure that we do in this is give enough variance through the rest of the world that the ability to have fun and robust and different, unique backgrounds is still possible, and that we don't just get the dwarf version of the story, the human version of the story, the human again version of the story, and the Hobbit version of the story, and that's our backgrounds. Mm-hmm. So, like, we want to make sure that as we're building this out, we still allow for those unique stories.
For sure.
That's what we're going to have to challenge us, because like I think we came up with a cool concept for us, world makers, not break. Maybe we're breakers.
Well, we'll probably end up doing that too. Yeah.
But as the world makers, this is a great fun concept for us to build, and now we got to take the challenges that come with it too.
So I guess on the flip side of that, Kyle, okay, so we figured out our starting point. What about the level that you're trying to end everything, right? So we're not necessarily making a pre-generated campaign like we are, but like when you're homebrewing, you kind of have to have the end in mind to an extent. And I think when you do that, you have to figure, okay, who is your ultimate big, bad, evil character? And we've kind of touched on that in season 1. In order to figure out what level they would need to be at to be able to take on that character, I would look in the DMG and figure out the challenge rating, and then figure out the experience point, and that would kind of give you a rough idea about what level they would have to be able to take on that deity or whatever it was. So like say you wanted to do a Tarrasque, right? And those things are god awful hard. You're probably going to want to be level 20 if that's going to be, for example, if that's going to be your ultimate big bad evil character. So in our case, I would almost contend that we have for our evil person like a lich of some sort, like a demi-lich or a resurrected god that tried to, like we'd kind of mentioned in the last one, tried to level the world and start over because in their mind it wasn't perfect, it wasn't up to their standards. But in the process, they kind of took themselves out. They expended all their energy, blew themselves up, and now they need followers and power to be able to come back to take over the world again. I would almost contend we could use the civilization building to either build a defense against this lich type demi person, or the PCs would just have to go on their own and just prevent everything from happening. Thoughts?
Yeah, so this is actually something that was interesting to me because truthfully, when I built out my campaign, and I know this is something we recommended in season 1, but this isn't something I did. So,
kidding. And
that's because I have my in scenario. I know what I want the final fight to be, but in my mind, I was always going to scale that fight to the level that they were when they got there. And so that was my way of approaching it. So when I saw that you put this question on there, I didn't want to argue against it being on there because I think it's a great thing to have in mind because it's gonna help us to know when we're done.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, it's something I was like, oh, I know I'm gonna struggle with this because it's not what I've done before. And so, like, because instantly, when I start thinking of it with this is kind of saying there's a few other rules that we kind of want to think about when we're building this out.
Okay.
And this to me is really the time component of it, right?
Okay.
Because unless we say, like, and I've heard of DMs doing this, and this is a great way to play. It's really fun. If every session you're going to level at the end of it, that way you can get to 20 sessions later, the campaign's done.
That's a really short campaign, though.
It is.
I mean, it becomes OP, but yeah, that's a really short campaign.
Well, I mean, if every session's 6 hours, then that's still
okay. That's kind of fair.
8 hours.
That's fair.
But otherwise, if you're just doing the pure by XP that you get from encounters and fun roleplay, then like getting to level 20, we're talking 5+ years, especially longer than that, probably at the rate that you and I have our sessions. So
I mean, we get probably 3.5 hours, give or take, on a session for us. I think for you, we probably still get about 3 hours, give or take.
Yeah, right around like that. I think the recording last night was 3.5 with 45 minutes of it probably being goofing around.
What you're saying is like we record once a month. It's not like once a week for 3 hours every Saturday, Sunday, whatever.
Right.
For us, it's like once a month, so it kind of drags out. And we'll get into all the specifics later. But I would pose this, though, because I think if you have the end in mind, and it's not like you're working, you're kind of working towards the end in a sense, but if you don't have that clear vision in mind, at least a clear idea, I think the story can stutter harder because there's no, like, you're not aiming for anything specifically. You're aiming for some like broad shotgun type, loose end tie up type ending to a story. There's no clear cut, okay, boom, here's the end of the campaign. Like, you see it a lot in like Halo, you see it in Skyrim, you see it in like, I'm sure when they built
all your video games.
Like any game, any story, any video game, like with a storyline, like I'm pretty sure the creators had a clear cut, this is it. This is the moment that everything is culminating to. And though there's a ton of wiggle room up until we get to that point, but there has to be the end, like this person or this battle or this item, this is it. This is what you're ultimately culminating to.
Right, and I agree with that. That is the style I use when building out my campaign.
Yeah, me too.
Like I said, I knew the final fight of season 1. I know the final scenario in mind for the season 2 that we're in. And if we do season 3, which I really hope we do, because I've been writing more for it, honestly, then I know the final fight for it. And honestly, that's my campaign's final fight. Like that, I don't see a world after that fight. And so I think that idea definitely resonates with me. Like I said, the hard part for me is putting a level on.
Mm-hmm.
Because my current campaign that has been meeting more regularly, that one, everyone levels together. That's the one you play.
Mm-hmm.
My other one, I wasn't going to have that rule. They were going to level independently. We just haven't been able to sync up schedules to really get into it yet.
Gotcha.
So, like, I think, though, working this out right now, what that final level is, it's just going to shape how we world build the rest of it.
Yep.
Because the open-endedness of D&D,
mm-hmm.
or the appearance of open-endedness of D&D, makes it fun for this, because if we're saying when you reach like level 10 is where it ends you at, that just means we have to limit the amount of side campaigns where they can go farm XP
right
and get there before you end up with just like, they were supposed to be level 10 at this or level 15. So we just have to work the world for that.
I guess I should mention, obviously you're not going to tell the players what level you're wanting to stop at, because then they're like, oh shoot, we're going to end it here. It's going to, it's coming. Yeah, you obviously don't want to do that. You can.
Because I think the pre-build that I did, it just announced, it's like page 1. It's like, this is going to get you to level 5.
Oh, true. Yeah.
With it, I think where we're building this out, I think it would be okay to tell the players, like, hey, this is going to be a 1 to 10 campaign. 1 to 10-ish campaign. Like, you might be 9 when you get there, you might be 11. That's fine. The idea is around that time, that's when the campaign's this story's going to end. And honestly, I think almost any story, because there's the ones where it comes down to you're fighting on the planes of existence for the fate of the world against the ultimate evil being, when you defeat him, there's no evil or whatever. But almost any campaign, you can alter the ending to allow for further stories with that party. Because you're going to get to the point where you've played in the world enough that other antagonists are naturally going to form. They're going to wrong someone. I know my party, you guys, have gone on enough angsty murder sprees. You've angered a few individuals that if I wanted, like, there are some organic antagonists that I could definitely, if I shelved them long enough, they could be the next big bad.
Right.
If I really needed a next big bad.
Bad guy on a shelf.
Yeah. You know, you guys let Jerry go. He can always come back. The ultimate villain, Jerry.
Oh, we don't talk about Jerry.
We don't talk about Jerry.
No, until he brings us ice cream and his friend Ben.
No, his friend was Tom and ours.
Sorry. I was looking at my phone for a second because I was going on my tangent in my head about the Lich, right?
Yep.
So, for example, if we did have like a Lich that was our evil bad person, right?
Yep.
So the challenge rating is 21 for a Lich, which is 33,000 experience points if you were to kill him. Ooh, indeed. Yes, that's a lot.
It's a Lich.
So you figure if a party of 5, maybe 6 goes against them, they're going to get at least 5,000 experience points a pop, give or take, maybe 52 and change, right? So, I mean, you're going to have to probably be at level 17.
Ooh, really?
To even have a chance.
Is that right?
I mean, without pulling up the DMG, I mean, I'm just kind of rough mathing it, but you'd have to I would continue, you'd probably have to be at least level 17 to not just get absolutely wiped.
Correct me if I'm wrong, isn't there weaker version of a Lich that's effectively the same thing? And I'm blanking, I'm trying to look for it, listener, sorry. And this is the section of the podcast where Kyle and Shay are trying to get on their technologies.
Actually, do math.
They're trying to remember how they things and stuff.
Okay, so I pulled it up in the DMG for like the thresholds per character level. For a deadly encounter, you'd be at level 14. If you were at level 17, that'd give you 5,900 XP per person, which would be a hard encounter, which, I mean, that'd be okay.
Yep.
So you figure, okay, anywhere between 14 and 17 for a basic Lich in D&D. I mean, that's still a long campaign. I mean, that's, 14 to 17. I mean, you're probably looking at a solid 4-year campaign. I would bet, assuming normal regular meeting times, at least for us anyway.
It's still deadly if they're all level 5. I'm just putting this into D&D Beyond's encounter builder.
Oh.
And just seeing if we have 5.
He's checking my math because sometimes I just throw out numbers and hope they're right.
And that's I know that about you. So love you immensely, and I think
it's okay. That's how I balance my checkbook. It's fine.
Okay, still deadly for all 10. Maybe you're right. There's one more. I'm gonna up them all. You said 17.
17 would be for a hard.
Okay, I'm upping them all to 17 to see how good Shay is at his math. And yep, 17's hard on a Lich. Yeah, so you'd be right there, sir. I'm proud of you. Good math on the fly.
I am too, because I literally took a dart and threw it at a wall and figured, okay, that'd be about close.
I'm quite impressed. So we could do a Lich and Lich, a little bit easier.
A Lich and Lich?
That is from the Candlekeep Mysteries.
Oh, I hadn't seen that one yet. Okay.
A little bit less lichy of a Lich. AKA not quite as strong.
Hey, this is a clean podcast, sir.
I'm not even sure what I said, to be honest with you.
You said Lichy Lich, so you're good.
Sorry
you're good.
for the peaks that I had there. You are going to have fun with that one. I was a little closer to my mic than I normally am. So you have good luck with that editing, sir. And listeners, good luck with that.
Oh, that'll be.
I am sorry. But
he's the reason I stay up at night, so it's fine.
That is true, and I am not ashamed. I think, so, like, keeping that in mind, 17, I think that's a pretty big one.
Okay.
No problem with it. If we want to build to 17, that means this season might be longer than we thought. I'm good with that. When we're thinking about what this final battle is, and we think back to what the world start was, I think that thought of like a resurrected deity or lich representing the resurrected deity makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
But also, you know, what we were talking about, it wasn't really that the bad side wiped out the world. It was that civilization tried to stop the war of the deities.
Yes, they tried to intervene between.
Yeah, and tried to capture it.
When you have a positive and a negative, and you touch between both of those, you get zapped. And that's basically what the world did. They tried to stick their hand in an electrical socket.
Nobody check our science. I'm going to go with it, though. That sounds right to me. But
whatever you do, kids, do not stick stuff in an electrical socket. It's not going to end well.
I can vouch firsthand. It does not. It's not fun to do. I've shocked myself on more than one occasion. It explains a lot about me. But
me too.
So I think, though, like with it, you know, they were trying to capture the gods. It went wrong. Civilization gone. So if we think about this, what I kind of was thinking, and I think it's good that we had different things in mind, because I think your idea is cool of it being like a returning deity. Maybe they were a fallen deity that's trying to return to former glory and sees this as a world that would be easy to take because it's lost the attention of the other gods, really. Or they're not paying as much. That way, if we say as much, we can still say that there's like clerics and stuff.
Yep.
Because I don't want to not let our players have fun. So I like the idea. Also, a kind of counter idea that we threw around is that, like, since civilization's reforming, this is bringing back the attention of the gods. And so maybe that war's starting to come back up. So maybe instead of it being a fallen god themselves, it's a individual or a group of individuals that we're trying to stop from essentially repeating the apocalypse of saying, like, well, this time we are going to capture the gods. Like, this time it's going to, like, we're going to essentially reenact the plan, and the whole thing is, like, stopping that. That's just a counter idea. I'm not saying that has to be where we go with that. That's just a counter idea that I had at some point in time, maybe in the last 5 minutes, or maybe leading up to today. You decide, listeners. But that way, it doesn't necessarily come down to, like, this mega final fight, although it can. The final fight between this other group or entity. It could be like a demon. It could be a devil. Because, like, we can get pretty strong fights if we do a couple devils in there.
That's true.
And then that would kind of explain, like, maybe they flourished in this world because of the lack of direct deity oversight. And with the civilization starting up and bringing that attention back, it's lessening their power and influence in the world, and they want it.
This might be a topic for another day, but I guess if we're going to take the deities out of it for the most part, how do we explain magic? What are your thoughts on that? Because typically, like, clerics, obviously they draw their sources from deities. Paladins, kind of the same way. Warlocks, in a sense, would be affected because there's no patron to...
Well, I'm not saying that the gods are 100% out.
Okay.
I'm just saying lesser extent to what they were, because if we're saying what before Apocalypse was such a level of the war between the two forces, like evil deities versus good deity, war was so extreme that the inhabitants of this world thought that they needed to intervene and stop this fight.
Okay.
And it was enough agreed upon to do this that this giant temp was made, and it wiped out most life on the planet. So, like, a lot less interaction from that level of interaction could still be like, you know, you never see them anymore. The miracles are not obvious anymore. The very few, like, maybe most don't even believe anymore, but they might still be groups that do. And so...
Oh, yeah. There's always going to be a faction somewhere.
Right. So, like, it's not saying that the gods left and that there is no patron to have anymore and the gods aren't available.
Okay.
I don't really want that because, again, I don't want to say no clerics, no paladins, no warlock,
right.
No...
we need our healers!
Right, well, and I also don't want to cut out half of the druid options and all that. And, like, there's some of the fighter multi-class, like, not multi-class, but fighter choices need a deity. And so,
right.
Like, I don't want to eliminate them. But I'm just saying, like, before, maybe the interactions with the gods were like, you saw them. They were there. Everyone believed. It wasn't a question type thing because the war was there. And then now it's been 500 years. For humans, that was if old, like they're dying off at 60 and 70, that we're talking more than 5 generations. They could be like, oh, that was hoopla. It was like a meteor blew up the world. We don't believe in it.
Or like they've never seen the God like the previous generations did, so they lost faith because they didn't see the miracles, they didn't see the walking with them and stuff like that. You know.
And if we're saying that,
okay, I see it.
The like goblins didn't exist on this earth, like not earth, but I didn't have a word for it. This world. There we go. That's the word for it.
Yeah.
Goblins exist on this world before, and like they've formed in the last 500 years. They maybe have never had a direct sighting, so the few that do worship the goblin god are kind of seen as the weirdos. Because they're like, you're hearing things, you're crazy. The like humans are like, yeah, we have legends, you know, it's folklore of the before times.
Right.
When allegedly this world was so populated, you know, now it's like the whole world's Wyoming. You walk forever. Sorry for listeners. I'm from Wyoming, I can say that. But,
well, like you could even contend like the elves being the generation that lives 1,000 years. Some of those would remember walking with maybe somebody similar to Arathis, the goddess of civilization, or like Pelor, or maybe Bahamut, maybe stuff like that. Like I could see some of the elves maybe actually saying, "Yes, I remember walking with this person," versus like dwarves and humans where they don't live as long, they don't have that legend because they weren't there.
Right. And like we were talking about that missing generation of the elves, so like we can maybe the now coming of it, like starting to age up generation is like yeah whatever, and the older ones are like no, this is the
like no we're serious.
Yeah, they like, and we believe they will return. You know, like we can do like that. Then gives DMs a lot of options with deities, you know, like the calling out, not answering because there's not enough call out to get their attention, or maybe when they do interact, it being this really big deal. That's what I love about these role-playing games is like that detail of like having that payoff moment, that intervention. Those have been some of the coolest moments in my campaigns. Also, some of the moments I felt like kind of landed a little flat because maybe I didn't execute it. Like I had this great idea and it felt great, and then like went to actually do it, and I was like, boy, if I was a voice actor, this would be so cool. And it's like, it's not landing, but that's also what's fun about D&D because those are our jokes. Then
that's right. And we will keep those in our recordings.
Yeah. So I think like if we aim for like a 15-17 ending,
okay,
I think that's gonna give us a good length. Let's say yes to that level. We'll come back maybe on that final fight, but I think like either way, if it's the Lich or Devils,
ballpark somewhere between.
Yeah.
And
then like maybe it's a Lich that's trying to blow up the world, or maybe it's just the Lich is the rising entity and wants to become a deity again. Like, I think either of those is a great story that fits this world, and so we don't have to hash that out right now because I think we would probably talk about it for another episode.
3 more hours.
And we do want these to be containable to our listeners. Next thing that we wanted to talk about, so we have the start and we're still on bullet 1 of 3. What is unique about this world? We already have one thing that's unique, the post-apocalypse.
That's right.
But really what we were talking about that is how common is magic and how many deities are there? Were our 2 main questions that we wanted to like really land for this. My thought, and again, please argue with me if you feel differently. My thought is based off of what we described is magic really shouldn't be super common.
Okay.
And I could be wrong. Like if you feel differently, like maybe it's re-emerging and so it's becoming more, or maybe it never left and maybe the sudden boom that wiped out life, maybe the world is full of energy. Like I could see that happening too. But my thought of it just not being as common is like if belief in deities is few, then like you're not going to have paladins aren't going to be common, clerics aren't. It's not going to say that they don't exist, but they're just one per probably 1,000 miles would probably feel.
I would almost say it used to be common, and then once the explosion hit, it kind of died, and then as things started to come back, magic became a little bit more usable.
Yeah.
Because people would find old artifacts, people would find old tomes. You could even make the case that technology magic or techno magic could be a start of things. Like that's how you get your artificers.
Yep.
You could have obviously your natural magics.
Oh yeah.
that would be, I think natural magics would probably be the one that didn't get affected as much.
Right.
If you have religious artifacts, demonic artifacts or whatever, you have to go find those or remember the tomes, blah, 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 blah. But I would say maybe techno magic and or primal magic would probably be the two more normal ones right after the explosion. And then after, as the generations kept cycling out, there was more and more like religious type magic
that's returning
that would come back.
Yeah. So maybe it went from like common now to now it's just uncommon. It's not rare. It's not to the point where like people are going to be like, magic's not real, but it's maybe just to the point that like,
I'll believe it when I see it kind of thing, because especially if you have a lot of nomad tribes, you're not going to have a whole lot of magic users or a lot of magic wielders.
Right.
So if you come across a group that does have magic, I'm going to stay away from that
right.
guy.
And it might be like some traveling groups have encountered it, some haven't. Some have like their quote unquote witch doctor one that's like, yeah, this guy says he can do magic, but he's not like,
yes,
he's not making it rain.
Yeah, he's more of a shaman. Yeah.
And so then, like, because I don't want people to not be able to play warlocks, not be able to play wizards and stuff like that, because those are fun, and we still want to be able to allow those. But I don't want to be like, I came from a clan, and there was 300 of us that.
Yeah, like you didn't graduate from
university
religious school because they didn't have any religious schools. Yeah. Those were wiped out.
Now it could be that your deity has come to you, and they are your source of learning.
I'll buy that.
Like, you're hearing them. Maybe they haven't manifested. But, like, you're kind of like that chosen. I know we're not, like, other... I'm kind of stealing from Monster of the Week. There's a class called The Chosen, and they can speak to another being.
Oh, I think I've heard of them.
I think it'd be fun to do for, like, one-off styles for us sometime. Kind of gotten into looking into other game types. I think, like, that type of story really works well in this world. Also, a lot of self-taught. So, like, that way, like, maybe how you learned to do Fireball wasn't because, like, you read Fireball and you're like, let me commit this memory. It was like, oh, wait, what? I shot fire. How did I do that?
Yeah.
After honing it, like, oh, now I know how to do Fireball. And so maybe then you wrote it down into your book because... Or you found a book that had some spells and like a lot of the pages were destroyed, so now you're filling it in as you go.
Yeah, I can see that. So then if that's the case, how many deities do you think we should have? I would like to have kind of a similar setup to like what you have for our game, where there's a few lawful good, or a few lawful, a few chaotic, and then a few neutral that kind of play both.
Yep.
I would like to see if we could have one that is a true neutral. That way he or she is literally the balance of... I would almost contend, let's do 9.
So that way you have 4 good, 4 evil, 1 neutral?
I could buy that, yeah. And then, but the neutral is literally...
Neutral.
Straight neutral.
And maybe that's the point of them being neutral, is that then it's even.
Yeah.
I'm stealing that a little bit because I don't... Like, you guys have never really called out about it in mine, and I don't want to give away a lot of it, but that... balance aspect of it is a key part of the story that nobody's really dove into yet, and that was very intentional. So sometime you should look at the deity chart and see if you can't figure out the story point that you're not asking.
We've been a little busy, Captain.
Yeah, I distract you really well by threatening to... I like to end on cliffhangers, listeners, and I keep doing that to them, so then they just talk about the cliffhanger.
It's true.
Weeks.
Okay, so let's do 9, like you said. So we'll have 4 on each side, and then 1 right in the middle to balance the odds of power. And then what was the other thing
and we'll build out, listeners, what those deities are in a future episode.
Yes.
So don't worry when you're like, well, you said 9, but then you moved on from talking about gods. So really what we're doing right now is building the foundation, and then we're going to come in and we're laying our good solid foundation right now. Then we're going to kind of in and build our framework, and then from framework we'll fill in the drywall, that stuff. I'm going to lose this analogy because I'm not a carpenter, so that's as far as I'm going to go. Someday my father-in-law will hear this and be like, "Oof!" But moving on, like we have 9. That's good. Are any classes more rare or extinct? I think we've kind of brought this up a little bit.
Yep.
That like your clerics and paladins are going to be more rare just by definition. Anything that has like a direct patron god is probably just going to be more rare.
Yes.
Not non-existent, but more rare.
Right.
I don't think any are extinct.
No.
In this world, it wouldn't make sense for you to come from a grand army. Probably more of like a tribal warrior
Mm-hmm.
in this kind of setup. So it still definitely can be an accomplished warrior. Lots of plundering, fighting. We've established that that's been happening a lot, so it makes sense. So that allows for barbarians. That allows for basically everything. So.
And then we need to figure out our starting point.
So this is really important. Like, I've had a bad habit of starting at port cities and really using that as a crux to just explain why there's more people there because it's a central point of trade. So me personally, I would like to challenge us to get away from starting at a port city. But I want to get your thoughts and feels on that.
I mean, I'm okay with not starting at a port city. If that's the case, then let's do something that may be like heavier in agriculture or maybe even livestock.
Yeah.
Like, because there's got to be a sense of commerce somewhere.
Yeah. The why here point.
Exactly. Yeah. So like, if it's going to be more vegetative versus more like livestock driven, or maybe you have a group that's very artsy and they can create a lot of goods. You have a lot of like carvers, you have a lot of like blacksmiths, things like that.
It's got to be an area that they feel like they could fortify to, because if the thing that's torn down civilizations and that have tried to start up more recently is the fact they're plundering, they have to have the opportunity for resources. So I'm kind of thinking right now of like builder games, Valheim, Minecraft, when you would get that kind of generated start, what made the areas that I was more successful and good. And so those ones were normally you had access to timber, you had access to multiple terrains, so maybe we wanted to be able to have some water nearby as well as like a life source.
Well, you're going to have to, because you need water to drink, you need water for crops. So, I mean, even if there's like a river of some sort, you got to be something.
So maybe it's like the base of a mountain. Like if you're thinking like Denver, Colorado, if you think about that, you have like the mountains aren't too far away. Maybe we'll be closer. Maybe it's more like Jackson Hole, Wyoming, right next to the Tetons.
Yeah.
So you have the mountains right there that you can kind of have natural wall.
Yes.
Lots of timber, so that they have the ability to build homes, walls, stuff like that. Water nearby. But then what are they doing for food? The thing with mountainous area, coming from you and me, we traditionally live more plains. Mountain area, the plains advantage is you can grow crops. Like mountains, it's probably going to be, you're not going to grow corn on a mountainside very successfully.
Not very well.
So it's probably more hunting and gathering than it is true farm goods at this point. How big of a civilization do you think you could support off of just like almost pure hunting? I mean, maybe there's land that like they could have farm, like you could have things like sheep, goat.
Yeah. Cows, horses. You could make the case maybe for 500 to 1,000 maybe.
Okay. Yeah. So that's pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a village by any sense, but I mean, well, I guess 500 would be kind of a village, but like, yeah, somewhere from like village to small town size.
Hey,
somewhere, I'd say probably like 500 to 1,000.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think it's a great starting point, because then...
Let's cut it in the middle. 769.
I think that's the episode title. Season 2, Episode 2, 769. But
she can do math. 769.
Well, I mean, you were right about level 17, so I have to trust you that 769 is somehow the middle.
Don't. That's a bad idea.
It is the middle of like 1,500 and something. I was doing so good, then I lost my confidence here. 5,038.
Let's get back to what we kind of know.
I think that's right. And then, like, if we look beyond that, if they were going to have more, you could have, like, your outlying villages that are maybe outside the walls that are in an area where they can farm with the promise of, like, support from the main.
Yeah, it's big enough that...
Yeah, I think this works. I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just saying I think it works.
It's big enough to trade, but not small enough to just pack up and move. Mm-hmm. Like, let's have this city kind of, like, it's been there for a little while, let's say, give it a couple 100 years. This city's, to the point where you've got some solid brick and mortar buildings. Well, you've got some established places.
Do we want to start at that point, or do we want to start further back in this city's, like basically I think the closest thing that I've read anything about would be like Tombstone, Arizona. The story of it, can't remember his name right now in history. The guy that went down there, they said, all you're going to find down there is a tombstone. He found, I think it was silver in the mines. And then the town exploded and like they're growing. They thought it was going to be as big as Tucson and Phoenix. And then the mines drew up and shrunk back down. But it's a great tourist spot if you ever want to go somewhere.
I'm sure my warlock from Arizona is screaming at me right now because I have no idea what the answer is.
Like we could be at pop-up tent level where like we're maybe starting to build some walls, but it's not like established, but starting. So like you could have a few stores, and then with the like goal and promise of it's trying to expand and grow. So you have like maybe a first-time elected mayor or about to elect the first mayor or something. I think we lost each other again. And just like last time, I was monologuing like a mad boss. Listeners, Shay has frozen up on me again. I have the look on his face as he is looking at his camera kind of annoyed. In case we don't get him back, listeners, thank you so much for tuning with us. We will, if we don't get back on here, we will wrap this up and finishing this starting point next time. We wanted to give the update, so assuming we don't get him back, I'm going to launch into mine so that we get that. And then Shay, you can splice this audio where you need to. I'll take a breath at some point and put in yours. So my update, last time my group met here, it was just a few weeks ago, I would want to say. So we picked up where we left off with party split. Half the group was teleported by one of the evil bads to another continent, the warrior race. I think I've talked about that before. One of the main big bads was approaching them when we last left off, so we had that encounter. He mocked the party members that he was in front of, and one of my party members was then challenged to actually plan out an attack because she had won her way up this civilization ladder to the point that she's now the equivalent to a general amongst their people because it's trial by combat to climb the ladder in the civilization. So she's climbed up to that general rank, and at that general rank now she's being challenged to take an assault team over to where the rest of the party is, the city under the mountain, and lead an attack there. And so she then blew my mind hilariously when she proposed her plan, which her plan was to teleport in, and then they were going to do the hokey pokey, and that was going to cause a distraction, so then the bad guys could attack. Of course, she's trying to trick the bad guys into buying time for the good guys when they teleport in. Then we rolled to see if the bad guys knew what the hokey pokey was, and no, they did not. But she promised it's okay because they'll learn what it's all about. And so she blew my mind with that. Meanwhile, over with the other half of the party in the city under the mountain, they were informed that the bad guys are coming. My rogue had an opportunity to use his ring that would take the soul of the person he uses on, effectively killing them instantly. He was given this by the evil goddess of greed, and she had given him a list of people it was okay to use it on. A lot of the party was on the list, and a list of people to not use it on. And a lot of the villains were on that list. And he actually went to use it on the party's wizard, but upon doing so, we had deity intervention as he was then teleported into a void where he heard two voiceless bodies arguing over the fact that he was given this ring. And one voice was saying that this was a breach in the rules, that the gods were not allowed to be this involved with the worldly affairs and this directly involved in the conflict. Said it was messing up the game. And the other voice was claiming that this was her toy and she was allowed to do whatever she wanted with her toys and she was just playing and having fun. And then a goblin approached our rogue in this void, claiming that the ring was his and that he was going to do whatever it took to get that back, even if he had to send all of his worshippers after our rogue to get it back. But he was willing to cut a deal. He would give our rogue 2 servants permanently if our rogue promised to give the ring over. So the rogue agreed for 2 servants. He would give the ring over, and then did so, and boom, he's out of the void. He's missing his ring finger, and there was an explosion at that moment that knocked him back, knocked our wizard down. Suddenly there was 2 goblins there calling our rogue master, saying that in the beginning they were with the master, and they've always been with the master. And our rogue named them R and B, so now he has his minions R and B. And so now that group... I forgot. Our warrior also went to warn the queen of the city under the mountain. The army of the other country across the sea was going to teleport into the city under the mountain and launch an attack. So, and then I left out the big cliffhanger I keep remembering as I'm giving my recap here. Then back down to where our rogue was with the wizard, big explosion, blah, blah, blah. Last time, our wizard was given a orb that he was supposed to put his energy into, effectively spending spell slots to fill this orb with energy that then could be used for 1 mega spell later. That orb was damaged when when that explosion happened, when our rogue came back from the void. And the wizard that gave that to our wizard came to see how things were going, got upset that the orb was damaged, went to see if it would still work. It shocked him when he tried to put energy into it, and he dropped it. And when it hit the ground, it shattered. It sucked all the light out of everything, and then there was a big eruption of light, and that's where we left off. So we'll be coming back to the aftermath of that. We'll see how long I make our wizard and Shay, who is in that room, our druid, and our rogue wait to learn their fate next time, because I love cliffhangers.
Hey, listeners, sorry about the technical difficulties this week. For whatever reason, my internet just likes to drop my Discord calls when Kyle and I are talking about D&D and DMT and stuff like that. So I do apologize, working on that to hopefully not have that error going forward, because we didn't really have it for season 1, but I digress. So, game updates. Yes, I need to update you on our game and a little bit actually had a little bit of a learning moment, so I'll touch on that briefly. To make a long story short, it actually kind of worked out that we had this technical issue because we ended up having our latest session this last Saturday, between the time that we recorded this and then the time that you'll hear this. But we had a big boss fight. So the characters had been in the dungeons like I'd been telling you guys about. And they'd been in the same dungeon for quite a while, but finally they were able to crack the code to be able to get into the room with the big boss, and it was a boss fight. I did some tallying afterwards. When we got all done with part 1 and part 2, and we had a 7.5 hour boss fight. And as I look back, I was like, wow, that is a really big boss fight. Now, the way I did that is we ended up having 6 PCs, and I upped the challenge rating a bit just to make sure that it was kind of on the heavier side, to make sure that our players were challenged in said boss fight. And I actually did something else that I've never done before. I outsourced the main villain to one of my in-laws who happened to be spectating and got roped in. And he did a great job. I'm super proud of him for stepping in and doing that. It was different because I had never seen that done before. I'd never tried that. And I don't know, it was just really, really weird not having full control of the villain. But at the same time, it was really fun to have the bad guy not necessarily on my plate, because it allowed me to kind of be the narrator more than the GM. Like, I was still the GM. I still played all the other minions and did all the rolling. Well, okay, I didn't do all the rolling. I had one of my friends helping me with that too. But just because, with our group, we have a decent sized group and a couple of friends that just like to come and hang out and watch us. And some of them, they get roped into rolling. Some of them, they get roped into doing other things with us too. But yeah, all that to say, like, I think it was a fun boss fight. Had a couple players. We had one player roll like 7 nat 20s in the same session. He was bam, 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 and but it was great. No, I thought it was a really great session, and now we get to go see. We ended the last session with just completing the boss fight, and so it'll be exciting to see where they go going forward from that. But yeah, just wanted to give you an update and. Working on the technical difficulties, so we will get that figured out going forward.
And then listeners, once again, we just want to thank you so much for joining us every other week when we release these episodes. It just blows Shay and I's minds, the amount of downloads, the support, the emails. I do want to specifically thank, and I'm going to look you up here so I get your name right. Because I absolutely do not want to get anyone's names wrong. We did have a listener reach out to us via email. Tyler, thank you so much for reaching out. You know who you are. That email just meant to the world to Shay and I. Also, all the 5-star reviews on Apple, I went through and read a few of those a couple days ago. And guys and gals, everyone listening, you have no idea how much that means. It blows my mind. Shay and I are just two guys that love this game, decided to, talk about it, and the fact that anyone listens to us, we can't even, I can't even put it into words. Yeah, just thank you guys so much. But anyway, if you are enjoying this, dropping those reviews, it helps us even more. Again, it just means so much to us, but it also helps more people find us. Those 5-star reviews, they just, wow. Thank you guys. Also, if you want to ask us any questions about the decisions we made, the decisions we haven't made, if you have any thoughts about this campaign that we're building so far, anything you'd like to hear us discuss that maybe we're forgetting, you can let us know at dungeonmastertalk@gmail.com. Also, on Facebook, we have the Dungeon Master Talk Facebook page, and then Twitter at DMT the podcast. Also, you can use the hashtag Dungeon Master Talk. And listeners, we just again, can't even put into words how magic this is. Once again, as always, I am Kyle, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys!